Hi everyone, my name is Valerie Friedlander and I'm your host for Motherhood Unlimited, the #1 summit for moms who want it all. Welcome and thank you for joining us. It is our mission to take the limits off motherhood and empower moms and dads to have it all for their own unique and vibrant life. We believe that when moms learn, and dads, to create where, who, and how they want to be, their happiness and overall life satisfaction increases, and they become inspired and inspirational for their children and each other. So if you didn't guess, today we are talking about supporting dads to become more involved co-parents. Our expert is Scott Behson. I invited him to share with you because I admire his work helping to increase the life satisfaction of dads and helping them learn to break through the traditional limits to work and to still be a co-parent. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Hi, thank you so much.
Awesome. So before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Scott. Scott Behson is a professor of management at Fairleigh Dickinson University, a national expert in work and family issues, and was a featured speaker at the White House Summit on Working Families and the United Nations. He is the author of the book, The Working Dad Survival Guide, How to Succeed at Work and at Home, the first book of its kind to provide advice and encouragement for working fathers, helping them to achieve success in their careers while also being involved, loving dads that they always wanted to be. Scott founded and runs the popular blog Fathers, Work, and Family, dedicated to helping working fathers and encouraging more supportive workplaces. He writes regularly for the Harvard Business Review, Huffington Post, and the Good Men Project, and has also been published in Time, Fast Company, and the Wall Street Journal. He frequently appears in media, including MSNBC, NPR, and Fox News. Scott also works with Fortune 500 companies as a consultant and speaker and has served as a keynote speaker at major events. So thank you again so much, Scott, for being here with us today.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. So let me ask you, I would love to know, how did you come to start taking the limits off of motherhood?
Well, I guess that wasn't my initial focus, but I've been an academic and a business school professor, so I work both academically and with companies, specifically on work-family policies that they might have to support working parents. And in my initial work, I was found that much of the work, and as it should be, focused on working moms and mothers' issues, because work and family does fall harder on women than it does on men in general. But it always seemed to me that, dads were being neglected in this conversation. And it struck me that half of all parents are fathers. And, we should pay some attention to the work-family balance and work-family juggle of dads. And also that by doing so, we would really help everyone involved. So it's really good for kids when they have, both involved parents, right? Mm-hmm. It's really good for moms when dads are fully involved co-parents, because then it's not like everything has to fall on the mom and she has to be the one responsible for everything and maybe curtail her career or not be able to live the life she wants to live. But it's also good for employers when employees who feel more psychologically happy tend to work better, stay longer, reciprocate with their employers. And then finally, it's really good for dads too, because sometimes, men, we get caught up in kind of our traditional role of breadwinner or having to be the tough guy or whatever else. And this cuts us off from a lot of the joy that one can get from, being an everyday involved dad. So, I really think that supporting involved fatherhood really helps so many people. So that's why I dedicated a lot of my work, much like you were talking about there, Valerie, to really to help support working dads, because I really do believe that it's good for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a dad too, right?
Yeah. Although I started working on this topic before I became a father.
Really?
But yes, it has made it much more personal. And I'm not a parenting expert. I have expertise in work-family balance and working with companies with this and interviewing and talking with dads around the country on their work-family balance. And I feel pretty good about that. But as a parent, I think I do a pretty good job. But, I'm figuring it out and living day to day like most people do,
Yeah.
And I think, the just striving to be a good parent is most of the battle, right? If you have the right priorities and you're putting in time and effort, I think most of us are good parents, and as long as we're not deliberately neglecting or hurting our children. But secondly, if we're putting in the time and effort, I think we can forgive ourselves. Maybe lapses, or we don't have to be perfect parents to be very good parents, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, in studying this, how has things shifted for you when becoming a parent yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm a college professor, so I have a very flexible job. It's about 20 hours a week. I have to be in a particular place at a particular time. The rest of my work can really be done at night, on weekends, with a laptop, et cetera. So this has really allowed me a lot of flexibility to work my life around taking care of my son, and also my wife's weird career. My wife is a theater actress here in New York City. So that's evenings and weekends and auditions that are tomorrow, and sometimes travel. So, that made us, and this is something I hope we could talk about a little later on, but it really made my wife and I, before we had our son, really have to talk about what's going to change in our lives. How do we have to support each other? How is it going to be? We really had to have these conversations about what she needed from me to continue her career, what I needed from her. So we had to get very explicit about it. I think that really, really helped. And again, we were fortunate enough because, we were forced to by my wife's career to have that conversation. And I find that too many couples don't have that conversation. And then that leads people to maybe you go into a marriage or going into parenthood wanting it to be very egalitarian and 50-50, right? But then life starts getting in the way and kind of pushes people into maybe more gendered roles than they really anticipated doing. And the only way out of that really is talking about it, and talking about, these are my priorities. These are what I need. This is what, our family should look like. Let's have a real good conversation about this. And then you can make decisions large and small to try to, create that kind of balance the way that's best for your family. And there's no one best way. So, if you want to have a traditional breadwinner dad, at-home mom, great, as long as that's something you've talked about and you've made a conscious choice about. If you want to have a crazy juggle like I do, then that's fine too. If you want to have it the other way, where the dad's the at-home primary parent, that's great too. But it really requires these conversations to be able to make these conscious choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish actually that my husband and I had done that more. I mean, we communicate really well, but I have the opposite. My husband was in theater. He was an actor, but behind the scenes.
Right.
And absolutely exactly what you're talking about, of just falling into some of the patterns of behavior and caring for a child while working and having crazy schedules, and the communication really broke down.
I hear it. And listen, I don't want to say like, I haven't figured out, we hit bumps in the road, and it's always a crazy little adjustments here and there. But also the other thing that really made my kind of orientation to fatherhood a little easier was my son was born just as my spring semester was ending. So that meant that my wife and I were both home for the first, several weeks when my son was born. And we got to experience the transition to parenthood together. And, right from the very beginning, I was, in there with diapers and, bottles and this and that. And, I think a lot of guys aren't given that opportunity because of work demands, or, maybe the mom could take maternity leave, but dad really can't take more than a couple of days, or there's financial pressures or whatever else. And there's a lot of good reasons why this happens. But it's unfortunate because what I felt like it's not very hard. You change 10 diapers, you're fine. You know how to do that. You dress a baby a couple times, you know how to do that. It's not really that difficult, the blocking and tackling. It's just, the unrelentingness of it makes it hard, right? But, what happens is if one parent's around and the other has to go to work for long days, then it sets up that pattern where you have a primary parent and a helper parent. And, that's usually not what couples intended. And, that kind of means that, one spouse works more than they want to, the other might kind of be trapped in the house more than they'd like to. So, really moms and dads need to talk this through together. What do we want our family to look like, and how do we get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. When my husband would come back after being in tech for a while, I would be so in the zone of, I know how it works. So I'm going to do it and you go over there. But yet I was resenting it too at the same time as doing it. And this was a few years ago, but we did end up working on the communication. And he said, like, kudos to him, but he said, hey, I wanted to be more of a parent. Like, you're not letting me parent. So what would you say to a dad who's feeling stuck and maybe is having trouble communicating with that?
Right.
Or a mom who's not letting go?
Yeah, well, first off, I have a lot of sympathy for this because society puts like this insane amount of pressure on women to be like perfect mothers and perfect parents. And it can really be crazy making. And a lot of women, it's hard not to internalize some of that. They feel like you're going to be judged if you're not doing everything or doing enough. And there's too much of that pressure. And, mommy war stuff is just, crazy and horrible. And, I really wish moms didn't have to experience that. But that sets up a dynamic sometimes in a lot of women's, situations or in their mind that it's like, I have to be the primary. I have to do this. My husband has to do it my way because I've read all the books and this is the right way. And, the fact of the matter is, a marriage really should be about being a team, right? And being a team doesn't mean everyone has equal roles all the time, but it means you're on the same side and you're working to the same goals and you communicate about how you get there. So what I would say, if there's a couple of a husband who feels like they're being crowded out, or a mom who's feeling overly stressed because she has to do everything, is, again, kind of having that upfront conversation. And, if you think about it, many of us are in the business world. And, if you were a manager who feels like they have to do all the work themselves and they're not having their coworkers or their other employees, being able to do stuff, well, how do we can mentor this, we can role model, we can help, and then let go. Because honestly, it doesn't matter if, your son or daughter is wearing a mismatched outfit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if bath time takes twice as long and there's more water on the floor. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the kid feels the love of both parents. And actually, it's good for kids to maybe experience two slightly different parenting styles, as long as parents are on the same page for the big stuff.
Right.
It's usually pretty good if, maybe, I don't want to get too gendered here, but there's evidence that dads tend to be a little more rough and tumble. They tend to be a little more like, let the kids make some mistakes and fall a little more, and then also having the more caring maternal approach. That's a good balance for a kid to feel safe in both of those contexts. So, and again, I don't want to overly gender because there's a lot of moms who parent a certain way and dads who parent a different way, or, it's not quite just gender. But, I think it's important that, we appreciate that if we're on the same side and we agree on the big things, we can do things differently. And that's one thing I give my wife tons of credit for this, is that she never made me feel like the secondary parent. And, and that's been a gift, really.
Yeah. I love that you say this because, one of my clients was really struggling once with feeling frustrated. Like, I can't calm my baby down. My husband is calming the baby down. And when she came back to me, she was like, I figured it out. Like, I'm more snuggly. And sometimes that's what he wants. But sometimes he wants the bouncy thing that his dad does. And it's okay that he's the one who calms them down and not me. Because there's this really strong urge to, like, I want to be the one to make it okay. Yeah. And if I can't and my husband can, it's like, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong. It's just different styles that resonate.
You're absolutely right. And also, there's the other problem in families. And, listen, I know this is kind of a pro-dad conversation, but, there are dads who are not doing perhaps what they could be doing. And, there's ways that I think many times moms and spouses and partners can really be important kind of gatekeepers to advice or information or help. So, for example, if someone is working long hours or they're taking a lot of work home with them mentally and checking the emails a lot, this is something that maybe, spouses can help someone be able to put limits on this, or to set no screen hours, or to make sure the family time is kind of protected time from the creeping demands of work, which is something that many men and women both face, is that, most people don't leave work fully when they leave work, right? Many of us have phone calls and clients and, other pressures, but it's hard, that's the thing. I was just having this conversation the other day where someone had said that, hey, I think as parents we're too hard on ourselves sometimes. And I said, actually, there's research on this. A recent Pew research study showed that when they asked parents what do they most want, or what would they want to improve about their parenting, they said we want more time with our kids. Kids, when asked the same question, they said they were fine with the amount of time that their parents were spending with them. They wanted their parents to be less stressed and less distracted during that time. So that's something that both working moms and working dads, can work on, but also it's something we can help each other with, maybe, if we find our partner is starting to get trapped by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of helping our partners, what can moms do to help support their partners being more fully involved as a dad? Yeah,
well, I mean, hopefully, this is going to sound a little bit, sorry if it sounds a little weird, but hopefully you didn't marry an idiot, right? So if you didn't marry an idiot, this person can hold a baby and raise a baby and can discipline a child and can play with the child and can, do all the things that parents need to do. And so sometimes it's either getting out of the other partner's way, and from very early on saying, you know what, I need a night out. You got the kids. That's actually, over time, I've come to appreciate that as a gift of time, of being the solo parent, to be able to, really have that special kind of more intimate, close time, one-on-one with your kids is really valuable. So sometimes just getting out of the way is something that's really helpful. I think also, really talking, again, I hate to keep coming back to the same answer, but when we don't talk about what we want, or we feel frustrated about something, but we don't talk about it, what happens, right? It bubbles up and then it comes out later in a worse way. So, another thing, if your husband or partner or whomever is working long hours, maybe making sure that they get, one of the nightly rituals is theirs for them and the kids, or that you help them with the family calendar, figure out that, hey, Saturday morning can be the bike ride with you and the older child, and then, you can kind of have one-on-one kid and parent time, maybe splitting it up or dividing and conquering or whatever else. So those are some things that could be done. And, again, hopefully, a lot of guys don't feel comfortable asking for help. And I know a lot of women don't feel that way either. But
yeah, I'm going to say, that sounds like something I hear a lot.
The stereotype of dads don't ask for, men don't ask for directions when they're driving and stuff like that. That's a little bit of that's true. Yeah. And so you got to make it a comfortable environment where, hopefully your husband or your spouse feels comfortable enough that they can come to you and say, hey, I need help with this, or can you help me here? Or instead of it, blowing up into frustration, it could be something that's more of, that you deal with when you're calm instead of dealing with when you're stressed. And when you have young kids, it's very easy to get stressed because you are sleep deprived and things are stressful. I mean, my wife and I have a really good relationship, but when our son was little, that's when we bickered the most. And that's just because we were on a short fuse because of the sleep deprivation and, all the other work that had to get accomplished. So, be kind to each other, forgive these little blow-ups, and, hold expectations for each other that you're going to be teammates in this. And maybe that might be a good term if your husband or partner is a sports guy. They'll understand. It doesn't have to be equal, but it has to be on team. And sometimes one team member is in the lead and the other times the other one is, as long as we're working together. So that might be something that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a lot about the work and the balance and coming home stressed. What would you say to dads and moms, as far as like being able to be more involved. You gave a few ideas of things to put down, maybe the screen time and, you know, preserving the family time. But what would you say, you know, some of the barriers and how can we overcome them as far as the work part goes?
Right. So, you know, the thing is, just as I was saying, a lot of us are reluctant to ask for help or seek support or admit that we're struggling with something. And that's true in the workplace too. But I find that most managers I've worked with, and, you know, again, being a business school professor, I deal with managers from all different companies. Most of them want to do the right thing by their employees. Maybe they don't know how, maybe they're, you know, and there's some jerk bosses there. But I think most managers are people too. And even if they haven't gone through the same work-family juggle, because of their situation, they probably have sons and daughters who are working or something else, and they see this. So, you know, maybe asking for help, saying like, hey, can we, is there a way I could work more flexibly? Is there a way I could work from home one day a week? Or talking to your, you know, if you work in a team-based kind of environment, talking to some of your coworkers about, hey, you know, instead of all of us being on call every night, what if we take certain nights where each of us are on call and the others can have a night where we can unplug from work? Mm-hmm. You know, we can seek support in the workplace too. And that depends on your workplace and the type of work you do. Mm-hmm. But if you have some job security and if you are good at your job, you tend to be given more flexibility and freedom. So, you know, you can do that. And, you know, again, in writing my book, The Working Dad Survival Guide, I interviewed dozens of dads all over the country, and many of them figured out ways to, you know, carve out little bits of flexibility, or have an informal arrangement with their boss or with their team. And, you know, one dad I interviewed, he coached his son's Little League team, and he would have to leave by about 3:30 to commute home. And he never asked permission to do so, ever. He just checked in with all his coworkers around 3. Hey, do you have everything you need? Anything you need from me? And then when it came to 3:30, he left. He didn't, like, announce it, but he didn't, like, hide it either. And you know what? His work continued to be great. So after, excuse me, after short, can we pause a second?
I'm sorry. Sure. There we go. Okay, you're well. Let's.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so one of the dads I interviewed in the book, you know, he had to leave at 3:30 to go coach his son's Little League team. And he never asked permission to do so. He just checked in with everyone else at work around 3 o'clock. Hey, do you have everything you need, etc.? You know, anything you need from me? I can check in with you tomorrow about this. And then he would leave. And he never asked permission, but he didn't really advertise it either, but he never hid it. And after a while, nobody cared because he continued to do a really great job. And in fact, he was told by many people that his example gave them more confidence to do something like that themselves.
Yeah. Now,
once you're back at home, you know, one dad set up no screen hours in his house from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for everybody, teenage children included, himself included, and it was an adjustment, but it meant that no one was on a screen, on a phone, on a TV, on a computer, on an iPad for 2 hours while the family was home together, and that led to a lot of conversations that might not have otherwise happened, a lot of family time there. So, you know, that's another thing that, you know, that can be done. And also, you know, I think a lot of it's time management. If you think about it, and if you add it all up, we have 168 hours in a week. And that means if we're working 50 or even 60 hours a week and we're sleeping 7 hours a night, which I know for some people sounds like heaven, but still, if you're doing that, that's like 40 or 50 hours you still have left over. And it doesn't seem like we have all that time, but we do. So if we're a little smarter about the use of our time, if we schedule things in advance, scheduling our priorities is really important. So, you know, maybe we've been meaning to have a date night with our husband or wife for a long time, and we've never seemed to get it together. Well, if we scheduled it in every second Friday night, you know, and then hired the babysitters ahead of time to make that happen, then it's built in. And 2 hours every couple weeks is probably not that much time, but also is really important, right? To feed a very important relationship. And we can do that for ourselves too. Make sure we schedule in time to exercise, to have social time with our friends, to have enough one-on-one time with our children. We can schedule a family board game night, every Thursday, or we could, so again, if we don't waste time, go on Facebook, check somebody's birthday and chat for 15 minutes. That's great.
Yeah.
Spending 2 hours getting sucked into political arguments with people you haven't seen from high school, is probably not the best use of our time, right? So,
yeah.
And I hate to say this to dads, but, there's 9 hours of football on Sundays, and that's probably not the best use of your time, because that takes away from a lot of other things. So, sometimes we can cut out some stuff, but I think the more important lesson is we schedule time, protect it, and then also have chunks of time. So instead of being home one night, and we've all felt this way. And in fact, a great book, Bridget Schulte wrote the book called Overwhelmed. I don't know if you've read it, but I think it'd be great for your audience.
Awesome.
And she talks about time chunks being really important. So 2 hours of time with you and your kids uninterrupted can really be great. That could be very reinvigorating, and you're spending this time. But 2 hours spread over the course of a weekend, 15 minutes here, 10 minutes there, is time confetti. And it's the same amount of time, but it doesn't feel as good.
Right.
Because you're distracted, you're switching in and out from different activities.
That multitasking thing.
Yeah, so multitasking really doesn't help. So I would recommend single tasking as much as you can. And even if that means you got to work late 1 or 2 nights a week instead of kind of working from home some of the time and always having things in your head about, what deadline's there. So if we're a little more conscious about how we use our time, that can help. And I know that sounds like a little bit of pat advice. And believe me, I struggle with time management myself. But it's important. And by the way, there's a chapter of time management
awesome.
in this book that could help both moms and dads, I would think.
Fabulous. Yeah, I was actually just talking with some people earlier this week about the idea of being ruthless with your time. Like your time is it's a resource and it's valuable. And while it seems like scheduling is restrictive, it's actually free because if you're choosing it based on your values, you actually create the freedom to do the things that are really important to you instead of getting caught up in the minutia of each day. So I take the attitude in my life that I'm very jealous of my time. Like I don't want to say yes to too many things and overstretch myself because I really want that time for me and my family, et cetera. And, actually when you first asked me to be here, I struggled a little bit with should I say yes to this or not? Yeah. This isn't a lot of time. This is a lot of fun. This is great. I'm glad I said yes, but I thought about it consciously. Yeah. Instead of just reflexively saying I have to grab every opportunity. Right. Because, then you stretch yourself too thin. So I think you need to be a little protective of your time. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of time, we are just about at our time. So I want to thank you again for being here. And just to recap, what would you say are the 2 or 3 most important things you would love our audience to take away from this interview?
Yeah, well, first off, I would say that most, again, I talked to dozens of dads all over the country for my book and in my work. The single theme I see repeatedly is virtually every dad I've ever met cares a lot about their careers and about being a good involved father. And there's a lot of barriers that get in the way, whether it's financial pressures or what society's telling people or what TV and advertising is saying what dads are capable or not capable of, or what bosses think, or if a mom's kind of shoving the dad to the side. There's a lot of things that could get in a dad's way of being as involved as they'd like. So maybe, for the moms in the audience, think about that. And maybe think about, are there things, how we structured our time in our house or whatever else that's providing a barrier to involved fatherhood. So that would be one thing I would say. The other thing is that, again, we're all on the same team. And, I'm not a mom. I can't presume to give any sort of mom advice, but ultimately, what I love about my work is that, you know, I get feedback sometimes about people saying, hey, this has really helped me and really helped my family. And that's really what I want, is that, you know, we have strong families and good supported families, so that, you know, our kids get what they need, and we can all, as you said in the intro, we can all start living the lives that we want to, or live closer to the lives that we want to, because that's really fulfilling. It's very frustrating when you have like some idea about what you want your life to be and you can't quite get there. That's very frustrating. And the closer we can get to that kind of, you know, desired end state, or the kind of life we want, the better it is for everybody. So if we can help our teammate with this, it also helps us.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it doesn't look the way we think it's going to look.
No, of course. And sometimes, you know, it's kind of easy to say, but, you know, it might take a couple of years in order to structure your finances or your career or your life to get to the place where you want. But you can make some small steps to get there.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, everybody has a different situation. You know, again, I have a lot of things. The flexibility of my job makes my work-family juggle a lot easier. I know most people don't have that. Mm-hmm. But there might be other ways we can at least move towards that, so that, you know, if we look back every 6 months, we see that we're closer to where we want to be.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. And as a reminder to everyone, the email that you were sent with this video also will have a link to Scott's blog, and where you can get his book on Amazon. It's the Working Dad Survival Guide. And yeah, there you go. Awesome. Yep. So thank you again so much, Scott. And thank you everyone for being here with us. This concludes the interview for Motherhood Unlimited. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another exciting, inspirational, and helpful interview from Motherhood Unlimited. And I look forward to having you with us. Thank you.